I really didn't want to be making this video. I love having a reason to buy the latest hardware, so I was excited to find out more about the PS5 Pro when they announced the PS5 Pro presentation with Mark Cerny. In fact, I was already convinced that I would buy whatever mid-generation refresh Sony was announcing because, hey, why not? Xbox has been letting us down in recent months and there isn't a lot to get excited about on their side of the fence. So I was ready to drop megabucks on the latest and greatest PlayStation had to offer so I could play PS5 exclusives in ultra detail. But that plan has changed, because what we saw was a huge disappointment and a monumental disaster for PlayStation. I wanted to wait a little while to make this video rather than just react on the spur of the moment and make an off-the-cuff reaction that doesn't cover everything we saw at the PS5 Pro announcement. Let's get this out of the way right now. The most shocking aspect of the PS5 Pro announcement was its price. It's $700. Now, the problem with that is twofold, but the price itself isn't necessarily the issue, it's value for money. For example, I and many of you might have been ready to drop that kind of money on the console if it had excited us enough. I'll put my hand up and admit that I was expecting the PS5 Pro to be at least a different colour, if not a different shape entirely, but Sony decided to just copy the existing PS5. Sony's new console also has no disc drive. I'm sure that's not a problem for many of you, but I still buy games on physical disc because I like to collect them. But regardless, if you're going to charge $700 for a console that's supposed to be an upgrade, then you better include all of the premium accessories. The very fact that a disc drive is considered an accessory shows PlayStation's sheer tone deafness and arrogance with this console. Keep this in mind because we'll talk about this more later. Adding insult to injury, the PS5 Pro doesn't even come with a vertical stand. This is mind-boggling to me. What are Sony thinking? Okay, let's push that aside though and talk about the console's performance and what we actually saw. I'm just going to lay this out there. I'm a huge sucker for graphics and powerful hardware, so the PS5 Pro announcement should have excited me. But what we saw was appalling in every way. The big feature push from Mark Cerny was the AI upscaling, which makes games have increased detail and resolution, but I was seriously unimpressed by the side-to-side comparisons that they showed. The Last of Us Part 2, Ratchet & Clank and Spider-Man 2 look crisper, sure, but something seemed very suspicious about the comparisons. They had a few select scenes, but when Cerny said he would show footage of the games running on PS5 Pro at the end of his talk, there were no comparisons between the two consoles, and games just looked like they ran on a normal PS5. It certainly didn't add up to $700 worth of price, especially considering you don't even get a stand or disc drive with it. Of course, the PS5 Pro will give players increased performance in sheer frames per second terms, which is always a great feature to have, but in many cases we're already running at 60 FPS. This isn't like when the PS4 Pro came out and we actually saw bumps up to 4K resolution from 1080p. We're already at 4K and we've hit a major tech ceiling, so there's only so much better this thing can actually do because standard PS5 is already powerful enough for 99% of people. And that's the problem with the PS5 Pro announcement. Sony is asking us to pay up almost 2 times the price of a PS5 for an almost imperceptible upgrade that in some cases is even a downgrade if you already have a PS5 with a disc drive and a stand. Then you have to factor in the fact that everybody across the globe is struggling financially right now, and Sony appears to be tone deaf to the reality of its players. I think this whole situation and the player outrage just smacks of the kind of arrogance that PlayStation is leading with now. I had high hopes when they gave Jim Ryan the boot because that guy never impressed anyone, but it seems like shenanigans are still afoot. I don't know how anyone at Sony HQ thought that this console was good enough to be delivered to market. Did they do any market research? Did they even go down to the cafeteria and say, hey, would you guys buy this for $700? What doesn't help the situation is that PlayStation has no doubt been emboldened by Xbox's recent blunders and mistakes. But the irony is that they've now given Microsoft a possible inroad to overtake them in the hardware department. Let me explain. If Xbox decides to skip the mid-gen refresh, and there's been no announcements from them, so this seems likely, and instead they decide to just release a brand new next-gen console, then they're going to be ahead of Sony. Imagine if Sony had revealed the PlayStation 6 and said it cost $700. That would be a far more enticing proposition to players than an overpriced Pro console. This might not be enough to sway players back to Xbox after the dumpster fire that is their ecosystem right now, but it would be the first step in winning players back where Sony failed. They've already polled players on what they want to see in a next-gen controller, so it's a very real possibility that they will just focus on the next console now, instead of messing around and disappointing people mid-generation like the PS5 Pro has. What's also disconcerting about the PS5 Pro is the fact that they've only showed the console running a few major exclusives. In their blog post, they promised far-reaching support all the way back to the PS4, saying that it will provide upscaling for lots of their backwards compatible library. But we haven't really seen that in practice yet. It's all just very suspicious considering the console comes out in 2 months. Surely they have more footage and information for us than this. In the end, unless there's a significant price slash, the PS5 Pro seems destined to be a disaster. It's more expensive than anyone can afford in this economy. It only provides a mediocre graphical upgrade, and it doesn't do anything new or exciting enough to get most people to pick it up. They could have at least changed the colour of the console for $700. I'm sure many would have liked a piano black console that the company has been known for, but they didn't. With this whole fiasco, I can't help but wonder if Sony was just better off not announcing anything at all, quitting while they were ahead and keeping their mouths shut, letting Xbox burn itself to the ground. Instead, they've gone and shone a spotlight on their own utter incompetence. Are you buying a PS5 Pro? What do you think of Mark Cerny's presentation? I'm interested in what you have to say, so leave a comment with your thoughts below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.